Every night, just as the moon rose above the bright roofs of Ajileke city, the same thing happened. A black car with shining doors would leave the biggest mansion on Honey Palm Drive. It would move slowly through the quiet streets, past tall gates, shops with solar lights, and roadside food stands where the smell of roasted corn still hung in the air. The car always stopped in the same place, near an old yellow building beside St. Pekita Clinic. And then, to the shock of anyone who saw her, the richest woman in the city would step out and beg for help. Not once. Not twice. Every single night. Her name was Madam Ireti Afilian. Everyone in Ajileke knew her. She owned hotels, farms, schools, fuel stations, and a company that sent fresh fruit to Europe and America. People called her the Queen of Gold because it seemed that everything she touched turned into money. She wore soft silk wrappers, drove in long cars, and gave speeches at business events where cameras flashed in her face. Politicians greeted her with respect. Pastors prayed for her in public. Young women copied her hairstyle and dreamed of becoming like her one day. So when people first saw Madam Ireti standing under a weak streetlight, holding her expensive scarf close to her chest and saying in a trembling voice, "Please, help me. I beg you. Please help me," the whole city nearly forgot how to breathe. Some thought it was a trick. Some said maybe she had lost her mind. Others whispered that perhaps her enemies had done something to her. But the strange thing was this: she never begged for money. She never begged for food. She never begged for medicine. She only stood in front of that old yellow building and spoke to one person. An old woman named Mama Busy. That was the shocking thing that had pulled half the neighborhood out of their beds that night. And it was the shocking thing that 16-year-old Amora saw with her own eyes. Amora had not meant to be outside so late. She was only returning from her auntie's kiosk where she helped to count drinks and biscuits after closing time. She had tied her small flashlight around her wrist because the street near the clinic often had poor power supply. As she walked, she heard the hum of a fine car engine and moved closer to the wall to let it pass. Then the black car stopped. She froze. The back door opened. Madam Ireti stepped out. Amora had seen her before only on giant billboards and online videos. In real life, the woman looked even more powerful. Her head tie was neat. Her sandals shone. Even the air around her seemed important. But her face was wrong. It was not the face of a strong billionaire. It was the face of someone carrying a secret too heavy to hide. Madam Ireti walked quickly to the front of the yellow building and knocked on the metal gate. "Mama Busy," she called softly. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time. "Mama Busy, please. Please open the gate." The gateman in the car looked away, as if he had seen this too many times. Two women selling leftover puff-puff from a nearby tray stopped talking and stared. A man on a motorcycle removed his helmet slowly. Still no answer. Then, to everyone's surprise, Madam Ireti bent down to her knees on the dusty ground. Amora's mouth fell open. A woman worth more money than most people in the whole city could imagine was kneeling in the dust. "Please," she cried. "I know I do not deserve your kindness. But please help me. Even if you hate me, help me." The metal gate remained shut. There was no scream. No fight. No curse. Only Madam Ireti's shaking voice, carrying through the warm night air. Amora took one small step closer. From inside the compound came the slow sound of slippers on concrete. Then the gate opened just enough for one old eye to appear through the gap. Mama Busy. She was known in that area as a quiet widow who sold herbs, stitched torn clothes, and never attended rich people's parties. Children said she could look at your face and know when you were lying. Adults said she had suffered so much in life that nothing could fool her anymore. Now she looked at Madam Ireti without smiling. "You came again," Mama Busy said. Madam Ireti lowered her head. "Yes. I told you yesterday. I know. And the day before that. I know. Mama Busy's voice stayed hard. Then why are you here? Madam Ireti looked up, and for 1 second, the moonlight touched tears on her face. Because she is getting worse. The old woman's hand tightened on the gate. Amara frowned. She is getting worse. Who? Before she could think more, Mama Busy opened the gate wider and stepped outside. She wore a plain wrapper and an old blouse with one missing button. Yet the way she stood before the billionaire made it seem as though she was the one with all the power. You should have remembered that many years ago, Mama Busy said. Madam Ireti let out a sound that was almost a sob. I remember it every night. Mama Busy was silent for a long time. The woman with the puff-puff tray stopped pretending not to listen. Even the motorcycle man did not start his engine. Then Mama Busy said something so low that only Amara, standing close enough now, could catch it. Money has a loud voice in the daytime, Ireti. But at night, truth speaks louder. Madam Ireti shut her eyes. Amara felt a chill move across her skin, not from fear, but from mystery. What truth? What had this powerful woman done that made her come here every night like a beggar? Madam Ireti wiped her face quickly, almost angrily, as if ashamed of her tears. Please, she whispered. Just come and see her one more time. Mama Busy looked at her for so long that the whole street seemed to wait. Then she sighed. I am not doing this for you. I know. I am doing it for the girl. At those words, Madam Ireti's shoulders dropped with relief. She almost reached out to touch the old woman's hands, but stopped herself. Thank you, she said. Thank you. Mama Busy turned and went inside to collect a warm brown bag. Madam Ireti stood and dusted her knees, though the dust still clung to her wrapper. She looked around quickly, perhaps noticing the people watching. The strong mask returned to her face, but it was too late. Ajileke had already seen what few had ever imagined. The richest woman in the city had been kneeling in the road. When Mama Busy came back out with her bag, Madam Ireti opened the car door for her with both hands, like a driver serving a queen. Nobody spoke as the old woman entered the back seat. Madam Ireti followed her in. The black car drove away into the night. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the woman with the puff-puff tray began whispering at once. Did you hear what she said? She said a girl. What girl? I told you rich people hide many things. The motorcycle man shook his head. This city will not sleep after tonight. Amara stood still, her heart beat quick. She wanted to go home, yet something heavy sat in her chest. A girl was sick. Madam Ireti was begging for help. Mama Busy had spoken of truth, and of many years ago. Whatever this was, it had not started that night. It had started long before. And somehow, Amara felt that this story was about to pull in more people than anyone expected. The next morning, Ajileke was buzzing like a market before a festival. At school, students whispered about the billionaire who had become a street beggar after dark. In buses, passengers argued over possible reasons. On social media, people posted blurry photos of the black car near the clinic. Some mocked her. Some defended her. Some made up wild stories. But nobody knew the truth. Amara said nothing. She sat through classes thinking of Madam Ireti's face under the moon. Not proud. Not angry. Broken. After school, she took a shortcut past Honey Palm Drive. She did not know why. Perhaps she only wanted to see the famous mansion in daylight. Perhaps she hoped to understand something. The affluent mansion stood behind high white walls topped with cameras. The gate alone looked more expensive than some houses. Bougainvillea flowers spilled over one side, and security men stood near the entrance wearing neat uniforms. Amara slowed her steps. Just then, the gate opened. A housemaid rushed out, looking frightened. Behind her came another woman carrying towels. Then a doctor stepped out with a worried expression, followed by a nurse rolling a small oxygen cylinder. Amora stopped breathing for a second. So it was true. Someone inside was very sick. Before the gate could close again, she saw a flash of movement in the compound. A girl around her age was being wheeled across the courtyard in a chair. Her body looked thin. Her head rested to one side. But even from that distance, Amora could see that the girl was beautiful in a quiet, tired way. And beside the wheelchair walked Madam Ireti. Not in silk this time. Not dressed for cameras. Just a mother in a simple gown, holding the girl's blanket with trembling fingers. The gate closed. Amora stood there with more questions than before. A mother. A sick girl. An old wound. A nightly journey. That evening, the sky darkened early with heavy clouds. The wind pushed dust along the roads, and shopkeepers tied down their umbrellas before the rain. Amora finished helping her auntie and hurried home, but her feet slowed when she neared the old yellow building again. The streetlights flickered. The black car was already there. This time, Amora stayed hidden behind a mango tree. Madam Ireti did not wait for anyone to gather. She stepped out, walked straight to the gate, and knocked with a desperation that made even the air feel tight. Mama Busy opened more quickly tonight. What happened? The old woman asked at once. Madam Ireti's voice broke. She called a name in her sleep. Mama Busy's eyes sharpened. What name? Madam Ireti looked around, as though afraid the darkness itself might hear. Then she said, she called for the mother she has never known. Mama Busy went still. Even from behind the tree, Amora felt the meaning of those words land like a stone in water. Never known. Then who was Madam Ireti to the sick girl? The first drops of rain began to fall. Mama Busy clutched her brown bag and whispered, "It has finally come to this." Madam Ireti nodded, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. Yes. And if we do not tell her the truth now, I may lose her forever. Mama Busy stared at her for one hard moment, then stepped out and pulled the gate shut behind her. The thunder roared. The car door opened. And just before they entered, Mama Busy turned toward the darkness and said in a low, grave voice, "Some secrets do not stay buried. They grow children of their own." Amora's heart pounded. Because at that exact moment, a lightning flash lit the street, and she saw someone else standing across the road, hidden beneath an umbrella, watching the whole thing. A tall man in a senator's cap. And when the lights flashed again, Amora recognized him. He was Chief Ajileke Afilian, Madam Ireti's husband. And the look on his face said only one thing. He had heard everything. Rain beat softly on the roof of the black car as it sped through the streets of Ajileke. Inside, nobody spoke for the first few minutes. Madam Ireti sat stiffly, her hands locked together so tightly that her fingers looked pale. Mama Busy held her old brown bag on her lap and stared ahead. The driver kept his eyes on the road, pretending he could not feel the heavy silence behind him. When they reached the mansion on Honey Palm Drive, the security men quickly opened the gates. The car rolled in. Lights were on in almost every room. Two maids stood near the front steps whispering, and a nurse hurried past the entrance with a tray in her hands. Madam Ireti opened the car door for Mama Busy again. "Please," she said. "Come quickly." Mama Busy stepped out and followed her into the house. The floor shone like glass. Paintings hung on the walls. Expensive chairs sat in perfect places. Yet the mansion did not feel peaceful. It felt like a house where people had been crying in secret. Upstairs, in a large room with pale curtains and a balcony facing the city, the sick girl lay in bed. Her name was Zina. She was 17, only a year older than Amora, but sickness had made her look small and tired. Her skin was warm with fever. Her lips moved as though she was speaking to someone in a dream. A soft machine near the bed made quiet sounds. The nurse stood by, worried. Mama Busy walked closer and placed a hand on Zina's forehead. The old woman closed her eyes for a moment. Her body is weak, she said. But her heart is carrying something heavier than sickness. Madam Ireti's voice shook. Can you help her? Mama Busy opened her eyes. I can try. But medicine is not the only thing this girl needs. Madam Ireti looked down. Mama Busy turned to the nurse. Bring warm water. And leave us after that. The nurse obeyed. When she left, Mama Busy pulled a chair near the bed and sat down. She took out a small cloth from her bag, dipped it into the water, and gently wiped Zina's face. Then she spoke quietly, without looking at Madam Ireti. You cannot hide the sun with your hand forever. Madam Ireti swallowed hard. I know. Do you? Mama Busy asked. Because this child has lived in the shadow of a life for 17 years. Madam Ireti sat on the edge of the bed. Tears filled her eyes again. I thought I was protecting her. Mama Busy gave her a long, tired look. Many adults use that word when they are truly protecting themselves. Madam Ireti bowed her head as if those words had struck her. Zina stirred in bed. Her eyelids moved. Then, in a weak voice, she whispered, Mama. Madam Ireti leaned forward at once. I'm here, my dear. I'm here. But Zina's next words cut through the room like a knife. No, she murmured. Not you. The other one. Madam Ireti froze. Mama Busy's face remained still, yet her eyes softened with sadness. Zina drifted back into sleep. Madam Ireti covered her mouth to stop herself from crying aloud. For a long moment, only the rain could be heard. Then Mama Busy spoke. She is asking for the truth even in her fever. Madam Ireti looked up helplessly. What do I do? You tell her. Madam Ireti stood and began pacing. And what then? What if she hates me? What if she never forgives me? Mama Busy's voice grew firmer. Then you will bear it. That is the price of truth delayed. Before Madam Ireti could answer, the bedroom door opened. Chief Ajileke Afilyan stood there. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a rich navy kaftan. He was a respected man in Ajileke, a businessman and political voice with friends in every corner that mattered. Usually, his face was calm and controlled. Tonight, it looked carved from stone. Ireti, he said slowly, tell me what truth is being delayed. Madam Ireti went pale. Mama Busy did not rise from her chair. You were listening outside. Chief Ajileke stepped into the room and shut the door behind him. I heard enough. His eyes went from Mama Busy to his wife, then to Zina sleeping on the bed. What is this about a mother she has never known? He asked. Madam Ireti opened her mouth, but no words came out. Chief Ajilek's voice hardened. Answer me. At last, she spoke in a whisper. Not here. Here is exactly where we will speak, he replied. My daughter lies sick, my wife kneels in the street every night begging an old woman for help, and strangers are beginning to talk. You will not tell me to wait. Madam Ireti seemed to shrink under his gaze. Mama Busy stood slowly, leaning on her walking stick. You want the truth, Chief? Then prepare your heart. It is not a small truth. Chief Ajileke turned to her. I am prepared. Mama Busy gave a sad little shake of the head. People always say that before truth enters the room. She looked at Madam Ireti. Say it yourself. Madam Ireti sank into a chair, looking more tired than rich, more broken than proud. 17 years ago, she began, before the grand opening of the Royal Crescent Hotel, before the fruit company became famous, before the governor knew our names. I made a terrible choice. Chief Ajileke stared at her. Madam Ireti continued, each word dragging like a heavy load. There was a young woman in our house then. Her name was Sod. The name made Mama busy lower her eyes. She worked for us, Madam Ireti said. She was gentle, honest, and poor. She had a baby girl. She loved that child with all her heart. Chief Ajileke frowned. What does that have to do with Zina? Madam Ireti's breath trembled. Everything. Outside, thunder roared again. In those days, she said, I had already lost 3 pregnancies. 3. Each time, I held hope, and each time it was taken from me. I became bitter. Angry. Ashamed. I smiled in public, but inside, I was breaking. Her voice dropped even lower. Then Soda's baby fell sick one evening. She begged me for money to take the child to the hospital. I told her to wait until morning because I was hosting important guests. Mama busy shut her eyes. Madam Ireti wiped tears from her face. By midnight, the baby's breathing had grown worse. Sod ran from room to room asking for help, but nobody wanted to disturb my visitors. When I finally came, she was on the floor crying, holding her baby. Chief Ajileke was no longer angry. He was listening with deep confusion now. What happened? He asked. Madam Ireti looked at Zina. The child survived, she whispered. But Sod did not. Chief Ajileke stepped back as if the floor had moved. Mama Busy spoke softly. She collapsed that night. Her heart gave way under fear and shock. By sunrise, she was dead. Chief Ajileke looked from one woman to the other. And the baby? Madam Ireti's tears fell freely now. I took her. The room went silent. Chief Ajeleke's face lost all color. What? Madam Ireti nodded, crying openly. I told everyone the child had been abandoned. I said her mother had no family. I said many things. Terrible things. I told myself I was saving her. I told myself I would raise her well. I told myself God had placed her in my arms. Her voice cracked. But I was also stealing what did not belong to me. Chief Ajileke looked at Zina as though seeing her for the first time. Mama Busy spoke the words Madam Ireti could not. Zina is not the daughter you and your wife had together, Chief. She is Soda's child. The child of the servant who died begging for help. Chief Ajeleke's hand went to the wall for support. No, he said faintly. No. Ireti, tell me this is not true. Madam Ireti could not. That was answer enough. The rain kept falling. The machines near the bed gave their soft sounds. Zina slept on, unaware that her world had already begun to break apart. Chief Ajileke turned away and covered his face with both hands. For the first time in years, he looked like an ordinary man, not a powerful one. Then he slowly faced his wife again. Does she know any of this? Madam Ireti shook her head. Does anyone else know? Mama Busy answered. I know. And one other person. Chief Ajileke looked up sharply. Who? Before Mama Busy could reply, there was a sudden knock at the bedroom door. A maid entered, breathing fast. Sir. Madam, there is a young woman at the gate, she said nervously. She says her name is Amora. She says she must see Mama Busy tonight because the woman who raised her left a letter before she died. Mama Busy gripped her walking stick. Chief Ajileke frowned. A letter about what? The maid swallowed. She said it contains the true story of a baby taken from a dead mother's arms. The whole room changed at once. Mama Busy straightened so fast that even Chief Ajileke noticed. Madam Ireti stopped crying and stared at the maid as if she had heard a ghost speak. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then Mama Busy said, "Bring her in." The maid hurried out. Chief Ajileke turned to the old woman. Who is this girl? Mama Busy looked at him with calm, tired eyes. Perhaps the last witness God has decided to send. Madam Ireti's lips trembled. No. It cannot be. But deep inside, she seemed to know that it could. A minute later, the bedroom door opened again. Amora stepped in. Her school sandals were still wet from the rain. Her braid had come loose on one side. She held an old brown envelope tightly in both hands, as though it might fly away if she let go. She felt very small in that grand room with its soft curtains, polished floor, and expensive lights. Yet she did not run. Mama Busy's face softened when she saw her. Come closer, child, the old woman said. Amora obeyed. Her eyes moved from Mama Busy to Madam Ireti, then to Chief Ajileke, and finally to the sick girl on the bed. When she saw Zina, she paused. Something in the shape of the girl's face, the line of her nose, and the softness around her eyes made Amora feel an odd pull in her chest. Madam Ireti noticed it too. She pressed a hand against her mouth. Amora swallowed. My foster mother died last year, she said quietly. Her name was Ajileke. She raised me from when I was little. Before she died, she gave me this envelope and told me never to open it unless I saw Mama Busy or heard the name said. Mama Busy closed her eyes briefly. Amora held up the envelope. Tonight, I heard Madam Ireti at the gate. I heard enough to know this might matter. Chief Ajileke stepped forward. Give it to me. But Mama Busy lifted her hand. No. Let the child give it to the one whose hands have been shaking for 17 years. Slowly, Amora walked to Madam Ireti and placed the envelope in her hands. Madam Ireti stared at it as if it were fire. On the front, written in faded blue ink, were the words. If anything happens to me, let the truth find my daughters. Madam Ireti's knees almost gave way. Daughters. Mama Busy nodded. Open it. Her fingers shaking badly, Madam Ireti pulled out a folded letter and one old photograph. The photograph fell first. Chief Ajileke bent to pick it up. It showed a young woman with kind eyes and a simple headscarf. She was smiling, holding two newborn babies wrapped in the same patterned cloth. Twins. Chief Ajileke looked up sharply. Madam Ireti made a broken sound deep in her throat. No, she whispered. No. Mama Busy's voice was low and steady. Yes. Chief Ajileke stared at the photo again, then at Amora, then at Zina. The truth had arrived. Madam Ireti unfolded the letter and began to read aloud, though she stumbled through tears. My name is Sod. If you are hearing my words, then I was not able to stay and raise my children. I have given birth to twin girls. I have named them Zina and Amora. If trouble comes, I pray that one child will not be taken without the other being remembered. Mama Busy knows the truth. If my daughters ever grow apart, may God join them again. Madam Ireti could not go on. Mama Busy took the letter gently and continued reading. Madam Ireti has suffered much, and pain can make people do wrong things. But no child should grow up built on a lie. If one daughter is carried into wealth and the other into struggle, let whoever finds this letter remember that blood is blood, whether under gold or under dust. Amora's eyes filled with tears. She had never heard her birth mother's words before. She stood still, hardly able to breathe. Mama Busy lowered the paper. The room was silent except for the rain tapping at the window. Chief Ajileke turned slowly to his wife. You took one twin, he said in disbelief. And the other? Madam Ireti could barely speak. I did not know there were two. Mama Busy answered for her. Sod gave birth in secret with the help of Ajileke. Only a few of us knew. After Sod died, Ajileke took one baby and disappeared before your household could return. By the time I learned what had happened, you had already claimed the other child as your own. Chief Ajileke looked at Amora with stunned eyes. So this girl is Zina's sister, Mama Busy said. At that very moment, Zina stirred in bed. Her eyelids fluttered open. Everyone turned. She looked weak and confused, but awake. Her gaze moved across the room until it landed on Amora. She frowned softly, as if trying to understand a face she somehow knew. Then she whispered, "Who is she?" No one answered at first. It was Madam Ireti who finally stepped forward. Her voice was broken, but honest now. "She is your sister." Zina blinked slowly. "My what?" Madam Ireti sank to her knees beside the bed, not caring who saw. This time she was not in the street. She was in her own house. Yet she knelt with the same humility, the same pain. "I have lied to you," she said. "For many years. I loved you, but I loved you wrongly. I kept the truth from you because I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of facing what I did. But you deserve better than lies." Tears slid down her face. "I am not the mother who gave birth to you." Zina stared at her, too shocked to speak. Madam Ireti pointed gently toward Amora. "Your mother's name was Sod. And that girl is your twin sister." Zina looked at Amora again. Amora did not know what to do. She had imagined many things about her real family, but never this. Never a mansion. Never a billionaire. Never a twin lying sick in a bed. So she did the only thing that felt true. She stepped closer. "Hello," she said softly. Zina looked at her for a long time. Then, very faintly, she smiled. It was small. Weak. Uncertain. But it was real. And then something even stranger happened. For the first time that whole day, Zina reached for food. Not much. Just a little water, then 2 spoons of soft pap the nurse brought in a hurry when she heard Zina was awake. Mama Busy watched closely and nodded as if she had expected it. Chief Ajileke noticed. "What changed?" Mama Busy looked at him. "The girl has been starving for truth as much as for food." Madam Ireti bowed her head and wept again, though now her tears were mixed with relief. Chief Ajileke stood very still. He was still hurt, still angry, still deeply shaken. Yet when he looked at Amora and Zina side by side, he saw what could not be denied. The same eyes. The same brows. The same quiet strength. At last he spoke. "We will not hide this anymore." Madam Ireti looked up at him, frightened. He continued, "Tomorrow, the lawyers can wait. The board meetings can wait. The city can gossip if it wants. But this house will face the truth." Then he turned to Amora. "You will not leave tonight. You belong in this story too." Amora's throat tightened. She glanced at Mama Busy, who gave her a gentle nod. So she stayed. Later, when the rain stopped and the house grew quiet, Madam Ireti walked out alone to the balcony. The city lights of Ajileke shimmered below her. For so many nights, she had gone begging at Mama Busy's gate, hoping to keep Zina alive while still hiding the truth. That had been the real reason. It was not money she lacked. It was courage. Each night she had begged because Mama Busy was the only person who knew both how to soothe Zina's troubled spirit and how to lead Madam Ireti back to the truth she had buried. She had begged not only for the girl's health, but for one more chance to repair what her selfishness had broken. Now the secret was out. And for the first time in many years, the night did not feel like punishment. It felt like the beginning of judgment, yes, but also the beginning of mercy. Behind her, inside the room, Zina had fallen into a coma sleep. Amora sat beside the bed, watching her with wonder. Mama Busy prayed softly in a corner. Chief Ajileke stood near the window, silent and thoughtful, like a man rebuilding his life from the inside. Madam Ireti wiped her face and looked up at the sky. In the distance, the first birds of morning were beginning to stir. And though she knew forgiveness would not come quickly, she also knew this much at last. No matter how rich a person becomes, there are some debts only truth can pay.